Just to recap, a stressor triggers your amygdala. Your amygdala in its turn activates your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system lowers your heart rate variability. And once the stressor is gone, your parasympathetic nervous system kicks back in and raises your heart rate variability. But if you start measuring your HRV, I wouldn't worry about the exact absolute values. It's the trend that you should pay attention to. And you should also not compare it with anyone else because, like I've said, it differs per age, per gender, per health, per fitness level, etc. But let's see how you can get an initial measurement done. There are certain levels of measurement devices to measure your heart rate and your heart rate variability, from low end to high end. Let's start with the high end. If you ever had a heart condition, you may have been asked to wear this 24-hour monitor at home and return it afterwards just to get the results. Or maybe even worse, you've been hooked up to a monitor in the hospital. And these devices are obviously the high-end ones. They are very accurate for measuring your heart rate and your heart rate variability. On the low end though, you can do the same thing with the camera on your phone. There are a few apps that can do that. HRV for training, for example, is one. It uses your camera where you have to put your finger on the camera, wait a minute, and then you will get your HRV value also presented to you. More low-end advanced devices are a Fitbit, for example, or a Oura Ring. They can take these measurements automatically. Usually they do it in the early morning when you're still asleep, just to get a baseline of your HRV and therefore your stress level. Downside of that is that it's just a point in time. It takes a measurement early in the morning, just once. And what that generally says is how stressed you were the day before and how you recovered during the night. So if you want to work on your stress levels or anxiety levels, because you know there's a relationship between the two, then it is better to look at the consumer grade measurements using a smartwatch. You can buy them from different brands, of course. You have a Garmin, you have Apple watches, you have a Samsung watch, etc. They all can measure HRV in some way and therefore also your stress levels. And these are recommended. But my real preference is a Garmin. I'm using a Garmin Venue because it does exactly everything I need and more. I'll show you on my phone what the stress measurements look like for a Garmin device. And if you look at the watch, they have an app where you can see your stress levels 24/7. So if we look at this day in particular, February 9th on a Friday, you can see the first part of the graph is blue. And this is an indication that my stress levels were low. And that's obviously normal because that was when I was asleep. And you can see the white line there, that is the body battery. The thinking is if your stress level is low, your body battery increases. So throughout the night, it should increase, right? Because you should get ready for the next day where you need to be active. Once I've woken up, you can see that here. I was pretty active that day. Actually, I was physically active, at least in the first part. I'll get to the second part. But the first part had to do with something I got from IKEA. As you can see, it resulted in a lot higher stress level for me. And that was physical stress. So I was actually doing something there. But if you look at just the last part of the day, in the evening, my stress levels were absurdly high. And this is not normal for me. But this was mental stress. I was doing nothing. I was sitting on the couch. And why was it that my stress levels were this high? It was at the World Cup soccer game, the Netherlands playing Argentina. I'm Dutch, and that was a very exciting game. It was positive stress, but stress nonetheless, and a lot of it. So you can see what happens in the night after. You see, my body battery was way down, all the way at the bottom, because it ended all the way at the bottom because of that match. And I was so excited from that game that I still experienced levels of stress even when I was asleep. This is how Garmin measures it. Any stress, positive or negative, physical or mental, will show up here in orange. And the more stress you have, the higher the bar. And it's of course normal if there's some fluctuation throughout the day because you're active, you're doing something, you're working or you're working out even. But you should also have these blue periods in the day where your parasympathetic nervous system is active. You need to have that homeostasis. In this day, for example, was good in the first part of the day, physically active and mentally active in the second part of the day. But in general, you should not see your body battery go down that far. That's a bit of an explanation on the Garmin stress measurements. Something similar you can see from the Samsung devices. And if you're using a specific app, you can also do that on an Apple Watch. It's called Stress Face. You may not be willing to deviate from your preference if you already have an Apple or Samsung. For the purpose of this course, you could consider buying a Garmin just for the duration of the course, or maybe get it from someone else temporarily, because in my opinion, it tracks your stress levels much better than the other ones do. What if you don't own a smartwatch, you don't own a Garmin or a Samsung or an Apple Watch, but you still want to measure your stress? Then you can only do it subjectively. Fortunately, there are a number of apps available on your phone, both Android and Apple, that can do that. So let's look at that in the next video. I guess if you're watching this video, you already know about the most common stress relief tips that you can find on the internet. But did you know that there are also lesser known but equally effective or even more effective ways to reduce your stress? I've written an ebook about it. It's called Beyond Deep Breaths. And in that, I will describe 10 of these lesser known but very effective ways to reduce your stress level. If you're interested, you can find the ebook on my website in the link below.